Nvidia is up in the pre-market, of course. Today, Piper reiterates that the stock is overweight. The chip giant wants to stop the downward trend that has caused shares to go into correction zone, as you are aware. Jim, I'm positive that there hasn't been any shift in broad demand, either at the high or low end. That Microsoft received their chips right away made the wags, whatever they are, say, oh, then there must be a demand problem if they got all their chips. That isn't accurate at all. Carl, you are aware that I dislike an up opening. Heat-seeking rockets will blast that 133 at the people who purchased it yesterday for 127. We did not yet have the crescendo sell-off that you require. You mentioned that at noon yesterday, you believed we would be approaching 127 and 128. However, it then went to 130 before reverting to 128. Nvidia has some sellers, David, who have just concluded that you know what, it cannot possibly be as good as last year. It will be just as good, in my opinion, and you will regret selling it at 127 after listening to Jensen Huang's remarks during the CES keynote on January 6. Everything will be as good, you claim. Are you referring to the company's success, or do you genuinely think that the stock will perform similarly to how it did this year? We're still discussing a stock that, as you can see, follows the performance, even though it has been flat for the past 6 months. The main issue with performance is that people have forgotten what it was like to go from the 386 to the 486 to the Pentium. These gaps exist. There are times when you are temporarily unable to ship. It was far more difficult to ship this Blackwell. They have that chip right now. It was Hopper. Although they are not the most recent version, the chips that Microsoft purchased are incredibly potent. And I believe that everyone stated that Meta AI would be the most potent at the moment. Don't forget about Meta, which is just improved, enhanced, upgraded, or price target boost. Meta AI isn't it? I believe it ends around June 28, 2023, but whatever. The spectacles, the translating glasses. How about that, huh? The other is mine. I'll give the other glasses to everyone. That's my gift to everyone. They don't observe. It doesn't matter because no one keeps an eye on my family. However, I do have the ones that please let me know if you have a spare pair. The Wall Street Journal reviewer Joanna Stern is extremely favorable about them. The real Ray-Bans are really awesome. You can have a nice time, converse to them, and snap pictures. Although you have been critical of the information, they have an article stating that Nvidia's cloud service may eventually compete with AWS. I believe they simply felt the pressure of never mentioning anything positive about Nvidia throughout one of the best runs in history, except from the fact that it's awful, it's horrible, this or that. They seem to have a curse on Nvidia, really. What about Nvidia? A jinx? Never mind. No, David, not. You're not either. Look, that would be like me purchasing Super Bowl tickets at this very moment. Yeah, with a jinx. They simply make these statements that are just, it's amazing. You would think the corporation is leading the way in EV charging station competition, bespoke silicon scaling walls, and peak capital expenditures if you followed them. Keep in mind that Marvell Tech and Broadcom use the GPU. The GPU cannot be replaced by them. Although they must purchase a huge quantity of Nvidia GPUs, Amazon would be thrilled if Trump could maybe match the Nvidia GPU. They continue to do so. Yesterday, we discussed this. Today, we will say it. No one is purchasing it. However, just to reiterate, you think that Nvidia's financial performance will be comparable to what we've seen during the transition this year. We must leave, but let's go on to Nvidia, says the song that's currently playing in my ear. According to an article in The Information, Nvidia could establish a cloud computing company that could compete with Amazon Web Services. Jim, Maker estimates that over time, software and cloud services might bring in $150 billion. Cloud and AI software will be a huge market in the future, according to CEO Jensen Huang. The business is expected to make $2 billion a year from software sales alone. Amazon, the industry leader in cloud computing for many years, would face significant challenges if they decide to enter the cloud market. In my opinion, Amazon Web Services accounts for over 20% of the company's total revenue, with a sizable amount of it coming from the cloud. I'm eager to see the claw come out if they do start eating their meal because they had this kind of co-opetition connection with Nvidia. However, Amazon intends to develop its own AI chips and may eventually stop purchasing as many Nvidia chips. Seeing that push and pull is therefore fascinating. The other aspect of this narrative that really interests me, nvda, is that it's a classic investor tale of a business expanding as it provides a product, isn't it? Thus, Nvidia has produced these highly effective AI chips. They are desired by all. Isn't that how Nvidia tracks the client along that path? You consider Apple and the iPhone, don't you? Apple provided us with all of these fantastic things. What did they ultimately develop into one of their main business segments? The services company, isn't it? After you utilize the product, they kind of walk through the customer journey with you and keep selling you items. That is somewhat different from Nvidia's AI chips, which are much more complex and B2B. However, I believe it's a reasonable analogy to consider. Well, everyone bought our chips. How can we contribute to the upcoming AI? Earlier last hour, we discussed how the focus has shifted from infrastructure to what do we do with this. One of the most important components of that next step is cloud services. You begin to discuss the possibility that the need for AI chips isn't the only aspect of the investment story if Nvidia can indeed make $150 billion in revenue from this in the long run. What about when everyone has enough chips? That's what I believe has been going on for the majority of the past 18 months. That concludes the conversation. If we hear more about this at the next earnings CES, perhaps the conversation will start to change a little. And $150 billion. I think AWS's cloud business brings in around $100 billion. Also, we think we're going to beat the biggest guy in the room here too, is what they would be saying, which is intriguing going forward. Simply put, I think it will be interesting to see. As you say, Nvidia has already somewhat transformed itself several times. They began as a manufacturer of video game chips. They are now this AI behemoth. Will they grow to be a major cloud player as well? We'll see if they can pull it off, because they have a lot of competition. They face fierce competition in a wide range of areas, don't they? Perhaps your answer is to zig a little bit and have other revenue streams that can also pick up if you have the chip competition that we have been discussing for the past several weeks. I wouldn't say it's a narrative of the future, but it's something to keep an eye on, particularly if you want to hold on to Nvidia for the long haul. It could be appealing to get past that semiconductor tail and explore alternative revenue streams. Finally, we will discuss Nvidia. Just recovering from those recent losses, those shares are up almost 3% before the market opens. Off around 10% from its greatest closing price this year, the stock is still teetering on the verge of that so-called correction region. Investors are currently awaiting proof of its ability to swiftly develop its Blackwell AI next-generation processors. These shares, which are among the S&P's better performers, have nonetheless increased by around 170% this year. Speaking of Nvidia, the Magnificent 7 stock is underperforming. It's still up more than 160% this year after all. It has had a successful run. People seem to be freaking out over this, in my opinion. However, can you guys notice any waning data that somewhat mirrors what we've observed since hitting those? Tell me if you require any further changes.